this is a film about Pranve, who I was asked to go and see because they were having great management difficulties. They couldn't get people to work with him. He lived with his mother and father on the edge of Heathrow runway, and the wheels were down when the planes passed over the house, so they were pretty low. And he's hypersensitive to sound. And he was being sent away, excluded from day centres, and he was attacking his mother frequently. And I was, they thought I might be able to do something. So some of the stuff that I'm going to say about him, we've already touched on, but I think we need to do it in relationship to the film. And so I come with the speech therapist who's going to film it.
Right.
And we stand outside the door because I'd been told he would either attack me or run away. And I wait when his mother opens the door. She opens the door and I listen. I don't go in. And what I hear is this So I simply say and he comes and he takes me in. Now, and then I don't move. I stand and wait. Okay. What is really important is that this is the first time we've met. This is not a film which is about long-term interventions. This is the first time we've ever met, and he's had no experience of intensive interaction at all before.
So you've said what you did in a way to be allowed in. You had to speak Pranve's language to be allowed into the house. What did you then notice?
Well, after a little bit, I pointed to the sofa and said, "May I sit down?" So I'm asking his permission to do something before I do it. And he points with his finger to the sofa. That's where the film begins. And so I know that he's actually understood what I've said.
Yeah. So that's where we join you in the film then?
Yes, that's right. Now, he is non-verbal except for this phrase, "Where's Charlene?" Charlene is his sister who is no longer living with them because of the difficulties in the relationship between them. And she's living with cousins. So the will gradually turn into "Where's Charlene?" He's got the rhythm.
Yes.
And when he wants to say something, he does the rhythm. But as his stress level lowers, it gradually, over the film, turns into "Where's Charlene?" The other thing is I sit down and I'm sitting here and you are Pranve, basically. You're turned away from me because you're anxious. And every time the plane comes over, you look up to your left. No, not with a grin on your face. Look at me. So he is frightened by these noises of the plane coming over. And when the other thing that I notice is that when he becomes distressed during our interaction, this is a lampstand, okay? And what he does is he puts out his hand and he flicks the fringe on the shade, and then he runs his hand down the lampstand. Now, I really don't get this, and I don't get it until afterwards when I watch the film. And it becomes quite an issue in the sense that what he wants when he gets up is beginning to get a little nervous, is he wants confirmation of what? And I looked at this for ages and wondered why does he do this? What does it give him? And then I was looking at it with a woman with Asperger's, and she said, "Oh, that's quite simple. It's the difference between soft and hard."
So he's feeling the tassel of the lampshade,
and then he needs that's soft, that's hard. Right. Then this is a sequence that his brain understands, and he can center again. Well, that's something one reason for videoing people, because you can't always pick up everything when you're in an interaction.
You haven't got time to interpret it.
Enough capacity to interpret it all. Well, anyway, he's now sitting down and he starts scratching his hand. And this is what he does. Now, his left hand is pretty useless. He had a stroke in the womb. And so what he does is he strokes his left hand with his right hand. And one of the things that I noticed that later on during the interaction, he will sometimes offer me his left hand, but then he immediately takes it away. Now, the reason I think is that when he is scratching his left hand, he's getting feedback in his right hand. But when I scratch his left hand, he doesn't get anything at all, so it's a big disappointment. You can see it. He
so
just
actually the sensation is all to do with his right hand. His left hand is just a recipient of it.
It's just
so this is a feedback he's giving himself.
It's not the recipient. His left hand is the vehicle on which he gives himself stimulus on the right hand. Well, that's just a point. What happens in this first clip is that at first he's turned away from me. Okay, turn around. Thank you. You're Pranve. Okay, but he's looking at me. Yeah. Okay, and the first thing that happens is he picks his nose. All right, you don't have to do that. Please no. I refuse a hanky because I don't want to get drawn into the role of custodial. Yes. I'm mummy and I'm going to clear you up.
Yes. And the judging of the behaviour.
I'm not judging your behaviour. Yeah. So I simply ignore it and go on. And what I am working with to begin with is the sounds. But I also start scratching them in conjunction with the scratches he's doing on his hands.
So now it's auditory.
Well, it's both.
Yes.
It's both auditory and proprioceptive.
Yeah.
Because I come on to doing it on his hand.
Right, okay.
So you
start with the sound and then move on to his sound?
I think I start with the sounds, yes.
Right.
And so he's saying and then I'm going and gradually I'm changing. You'll be surprised how quickly I change it. And then almost immediately he does something different. He goes so I go from I go
So it's
I draw the shape of the sound on his arm. And I'm not sure at which stage he decides I put my hand out for some reason, and he puts his ball of string, which he's kept under his arm, in my hand, takes it back very quickly. And then he picks up one or two bits of string, or gets me to pick up a bit of string. And then he decides I'm okay, and he turns round to me, and there's almost immediately a lovely, very shy, almost flirtatious interaction between us. And his very almost coy, smiles of someone who, this is someone I rather like, I really want to get to know you. Well, that's fine, and we go on then with the interaction, and periodically there's this, he gets a little bit anxious. But early on I am overconfident because it's working so well. Yeah. So I go in when he's not looking at me. And immediately he but I don't take any notice. I just simply confirm that. Yeah. Right, got the message. Yeah. I bang something else, and he doesn't persist. Yeah.
Because you know he's been heard.
Yes, considering his reputation, that's quite a relief for him. But, and that's the only time at which he's doubtful about our interaction, really. But this goes on for some time, and then eventually I can see he's getting a bit anxious. But I've learned the trick of
playing with the tassels,
playing with tassels, but not I haven't got.
You haven't
that I have
noticed
followed
that,
through.
right,
And
yeah.
he keeps on trying to make me actually do it.
Yes.
He actually takes my hand and tries and does.
Yes.
And in the end, I can see he's getting a bit sort of anxious. And so he tries once more, and I stiffen, and he pushes me away.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know
You're not
what's
getting
going on.
it.
I'm not getting
Yes.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the first
Okay.
clip. I wonder if I should try sitting there and see what happens in the corner there. No, sit down on the toilet. Don't move. Don't move. Don't move. No, sit here. It's a little bit anxious, isn't it?
That's good. Clean your hand.
When he is doing this, he knows what he's doing.
So the next bit we're going to see is when Pranve is actually sitting in the hall and banging the door. What was that about? What happened there?
Well, his dad says he does this when he's cross. And it may have been because I didn't follow through the anxiety route to confirm the routine. I don't know. Anyway, he was in the hall and he was banging the door, and his dad said they try and stop him. And I'm saying, well, no, actually, you need to answer him, because if he's cross, you know.
Yeah.
And his dad says something rather touching. He says, I see that we've been against him and you're always there for him.
Yeah, you're with him.
You're with him, yes. And I say, yes, we need to be we need to be there with them. And we get into a sort of conversation where he bangs and I bang and that sort of thing. And then he's cheered up. He wants to come back in, doesn't know how to do it. So he takes his ball of string and throws it in. So he's got a strategy for getting himself over the threshold.
Yes. I just think that's fascinating, seeing that's how he gives himself almost permission that it's safe to move from A to B. Because I see my precious ball of string that I've taken from my armpit and I've thrown it and now I can follow it.
I think it's almost more than that. It releases the mechanical
ability
to get
because that's lowered the anxiety. When I've done that, I know that's safe. My ball of string is safe. I can now feel safe enough to release the mechanism.
I can get in. One can't be absolutely certain.
No, that's what it looks like.
But this is what it looks like. He comes in and he looks at me and he stamps experimentally, and so I stamp back. And he's laughing by this time. And then he turns back, picks up his string. And another bit from the chair, and then he stands up and he looks over and sees his mum, and you can see him, and then he walks over to his mum and he puts his arm around her and kisses her. I'm told this is for the first time, but I'm not sure it was the first time during the day or whether it was. But
it wasn't what she was expecting.
It wasn't what she was expecting.
Because she
was sort of saying, they just wait, stay there.
Because her recent experience is that she's been at the receiving end of quite a lot of distressed behaviour.
Yes, exactly. So that's the end of that particular rather short clip. But I think what's important is his father's change in understanding. Almost very quickly he picked up the difference between we must try and cope with behaviours as opposed to engaging with them.
So the custodial coping and controlling of behaviours, he's suddenly realised actually that what you're doing is responding to that behaviour because this behaviour needs answering.
Yes,
you've answered it. When you've answered, Pranve, actually...
He immediately cheers up and comes in and engages in the most intimate, warm way with his mother.
Yeah.
By doing that, he realised he shouldn't be doing that.
No, someone answers him, so it attracts his brain. It's not a question of whether I should or shouldn't do things. It's, does my brain recognise this? But it's also non-threatening. It's something, something's happening out there I recognise, and it shifts their brain from the inner distress to the world outside, because that's where the tantrums go on. But you need to shift their interest and their focus, and you do that simply by answering them. So I might do it again.
So you're very much with him. We've been against. We've been going.
Yes, that's right. We have to be with them. We have to be there for them.
Yeah.
And not to think in terms of our reality. One of the problems is that their reality they experience is completely different from the reality which we experience. And we tend to try and base our strategies on our reality without understanding their reality. And so we have to go in and work with theirs.
You're happy now,
He's happy, isn't he? He's right.
Smiling.
That's good. Just
I think that the reason we included this clip is because Pranve is actually now saying, "Where's Charlene?" And also he's no longer interested in the planes going over. So we've actually overridden his hypersensitivity because he's so fascinated in our engagement.
And the engagement is so meaningful to him that his anxiety levels are lower, and that has released the mechanism again for him to actually use speech.
Yes, and you can. I think that's more of a gradual process.
Yes.
You can actually hear it. It starts and you can hear it gradually coming throughout the interventions. But I think the main thing is that he's no longer. His focus has shifted. His focus has shifted onto me rather than being on the terror. The terror is reduced. His focus has shifted onto our conversation. And he starts showing me various different things he can do. And particularly it turns out he loves rhythm, so he claps me rhythms.
And you're copying them back?
Sort of, but not the same. So he goes, and I go.
Yes.
So I'm answering. It's like call and response. You know what the American Army do? And the other. They answer when they're marching, and we get into this flow of interaction. I actually, he's giving me full eye contact, and I answer his sounds when he looks at me.
Right. Okay.
And really that's a very short session. Okay. 2 points. One is he's saying, "Where's Charlene?" The other is that he's no longer, we've overridden his hypersensitivity. Yes. He's looking at me and he's more interested in me than he is.
And the sounds that you're making are absolutely acceptable to him because they are recognisable, and you're only doing it when he's looking at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. clip number 4 looks like it is taking place after lunch, and you can see the connection between you growing.
It's absolutely amazing. This is an extraordinary clip, bearing in mind that Pranve is non-verbal, apart from this phrase that he only says when he's very relaxed, which is "Where's Charlene?" which is led into by the rhythm. Yes.
Yeah.
After lunch, he's sitting on a springy chair. I haven't got one here, but he can bounce on it.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm really wondering where we're going now, because it's a little while, about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour since we've sort of broken off. And he comes over and he brings the chair over and he sits it in front of me. And then he looks round and, you know, it's
giving
quite
you some
obvious.
lovely
And,
cues.
yes, and he's obviously saying, you know, come on, get on with it.
Yeah.
I want to be bounced.
Yes.
So I bounce him when he makes a sound.
Yeah.
And every time he makes a sound, I bounce him. And then he starts doing something. Now, I have absolutely no idea what's happening. And if I had known, I would have probably eased off and let him get on with it. Because I think there are times during this intervention where I'm actually, he's struggling because I'm putting stuff in which isn't what he's actually trying to get at.
Yes. But he's a determined man, and he gets it.
Yes, he gets it, yes, quite. So he starts off and he's making various sounds, and then there's one which sort of gradually emerging. So he's got a consistent rhythm at a consistent pitch level. And I'm sort of playing around with this, and really I think it would have been better if I'd been silent. But anyway, he goes ahead, and what eventually emerges out of this is Baba Black Sheep, Baba Black Sheep, and you know, and half of me is sitting there thinking, it's the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened. And the other half saying, this is age inappropriate.
Yes. What a shame it's not Black Sheep. But this is what he wants to say.
This is what he's trying to show me.
Yes.
That he can do. At this stage, he is absolutely, totally dedicated to showing me what he can do. Now, his speech therapist and his mother and dad say he has never, ever said anything but where's Charlene? So this is a completely new venture of him. Where he's been storing it all these years, we've no idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that, and I'm sort of gobsmacked, but not enough to shut me up, and I wish I had. But it doesn't matter, because you can see what happens as he struggles. And then he goes on, and he tries for the second line. And so it starts, oh. So he's got, again, the rhythm, have you any wool, have you any wool? Again, I'm almost struggling against the fact that it's Baba Black Sheep. You know, I would rather it was something more age appropriate. You know, there are two bits of me which are really struggling with this, and I think, you know, one has to recognise one's own. I look back on it and laugh, but it was ridiculous.
Yes. Your own agenda is trying to.
My own agenda was trying to push
there.
its way in. You know. Anyway, suddenly, what happens next is, you know the phrase, trying to get your head around something.
Yes.
So he's doing this. Literally, he's trying to get the motor movements.
Yeah.
And then he does this. His jaw is working hard.
Yeah.
And then he goes out of the room for a second or two. And we come on to clip 5.
Yes.
As he comes in the room, he's singing, Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? And, you know, we're all falling about with amazement, you know, that it's very, very clear. Yeah. And, you know, and he is so pleased with what he, you know. But unfortunately,
and clearly everybody around him is.
Of course, the film runs out at that stage.
Yes. But what an amazing thing to have captured.
Well,
the actual process of seeing him.
This is
struggling to make the connection. And
speech therapists look at this and they say, and also a psychologist I had last week, look, you can see him actually desperately trying to get the movements right.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's the end of the Pranve film.
Can I ask how old Pranve was at that moment?
He's 23.
So the 23-year-old is actually managing, through your interaction with him, through your joint interaction, that has enabled him to access an ability that's been lying there, dormant, that he hasn't
3
quite
years.
been able to. Yeah.
Sorry, we've been there 3 hours.
3 hours.
That's the length of the
Yes,
intervention there.
Yeah. Okay.
I need to say just a little bit more about him because it's not the end of the story, unfortunately. Well, fortunately and unfortunately. When we came to the end of the session, we were outside at that stage. We'd run out of film.
Yes.
We then came in and he went and sat in his own room. Well, this is what you're talking about, assimilation time.
Yes.
You know, I don't go in after him because although we've had a fabulous time, and this man who is considered to be so dangerous turns out to be the most wonderful companion.
Yeah.
He's done something so amazing for us and for himself.
Yes.
And he's sitting there. But I want to say we have to go, and I want to say goodbye to him, and I don't quite know how to do this.
No, because he's taken himself off.
Yes, exactly.
You don't want to intrude, but
So I go round the outside of the house, and he's sitting in the bay window, and I don't know if you can see. If those are my knees there, his hands are on his knees like this, and I'm outside, and I put my hand on the window, this bay window, beside him, on the other side of the window pane. And he looks at his hands and he does this. He looks at them very carefully, turns it over like that, looks at it, and then fits it over my hand.
So again, you're seeing the thought process, you're seeing
the interest
in
I actually
you.
saw him look at it before he undid it.
So visually and physically, he's changing his fist into a representation of your palm, and then he's joining it to your palm.
And so, and they're not supposed to be able to copy hand movements, They clearly can once they're relaxed. I've seen this in other films, in the one, Jessica Kingsley, the Autism and Intensive Interaction.
Yes.
The little boy at the end very clearly copies a movement like this, which is a very difficult one, and obviously hasn't done before. And they can copy hand movements if the tension and anxiety are sufficiently low. We were very moved by this, basically. It was most extraordinary farewell. Unfortunately, there is a sadness in this. It was the last time I saw him because 6 months later he died because he had an epileptic seizure and the ambulance was sent to the wrong place. And when they got there, they didn't give him oxygen and he died. I had rung his mother and she'd said, yes, well, he has the occasional off day. Because, of course, they'd embraced this. They'd managed to get him back to the day centre for a couple of days a week. They'd embraced us, they knew how to interact with. They could have fun with him.
So for the last 6 months of his life,
he and
his parents were able to have a joyful relationship.
A joyful relationship. And she said occasionally he has an off day, but we know how to engage with him now. And so at least we helped a bit in that situation, as much as we could. And he had been released really from the terror.
Yes, yeah.
Because when he was obviously frightened.
Yes, and now he had a way of living where he was living without that degree of terror.
He didn't need to attack
his family were able to
engage with him meaningfully.
Yeah. I'm just so grateful that we had a chance to see Pranve and you in that interaction.
I'm so grateful that they allowed me to use this film for teaching, and it is only for teaching purposes. Isn't supposed to go on general distribution, to be downloaded.
Yes.
It's very important that we respect that. He was a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
So I'm waddling the chair at the same time as it sounds.
Betsy, a little girl. Hello. Hello.
Did you notice that the speech was much clearer that time? That's relaxation.